Hello, U.S. history students, and welcome to the new material for this week. Now, we're going to start off here by reviewing a little bit about the Great Depression and then talking about this new program that this new president, Franklin Roosevelt, is going to offer called the New Deal. Now, last week we were talking about the 1930s. The 30s are marked by the Great Depression, and we talked about the causes of the Great Depression, the overspeculation of stocks, the fact that banks are closing, the fact that the Hawley-Smoot tariff is impacting trade. All this is going to contribute to the severe downturn in the economy, the Great Depression, which is going to last from 1929 to 1940, and we're not going to be fully recovered until 1954. And we looked at all the effects and how the effects, not just unemployment and banks closing and things like that, but even healthcare for children and schools closing and demoralization of the people and an increase in suicide. All these are factors of the Great Depression, and that's what makes the Great Depression great, is because of the amount of time it takes, the amount of countries that it impacts, not just us but overseas, and then all these effects that are tied to this severe economic downturn. Well, Americans want help. Okay, and we talked last week about President Hoover. President Hoover gets the blame for the Great Depression. He doesn't do enough. He doesn't take it seriously enough at the beginning. He's not sure he's got the power to do anything with it. And then he thinks business will take care of itself. All right. And then by the time he realizes, hey, we're in something significant, it's too late. So Americans are looking for a change. And that's where we're going to pick up here. During the Depression, 1 in 4 workers were unemployed. We talked about that. 25% of the working population is unemployed. Now, if you want to take your own notes, you can. I would highly suggest you use the worksheet on Canvas simply because of the amount of material that we're going through. Okay. So 1 in 4 workers are unemployed. By the end of 1932, and really 32, 33 is kind of when the Depression is at its worst. By the end of 1932, Americans are ready for a change. 1932 also happens to be an election year. Hoover, of course, getting the blame for the Great Depression, probably not going to win re-election. All right. 1932, the Democrat, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR, beat Hoover in the presidential election. Okay, so Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, will become president in 1932. Now, become familiar with him. We are going to talk more about him. He is the only president to serve 4 consecutive terms. He gets elected in 1932, he gets reelected in 1936, reelected in 1940, and then reelected in 1944. Gets elected in 32 and reelected in 36 because we're in the midst of the Great Depression. 1940, we're gearing up for World War II. 1944, we're in the midst of World War II. So we have these two huge events. We don't want to change leadership in the middle of these events, which is why he gets elected 4 consecutive times. All right. Now there's a constitutional amendment to prevent that. All right. Also, fun fact, he is a cousin of Teddy Roosevelt, one of our progressive presidents that we talked about earlier. And you remember, Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. Franklin Roosevelt is a Democrat. Okay, so Roosevelt has won the presidential election in 1932. Roosevelt has these great quotes, and to rally a frightened nation, when he took office, he said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself," which may not sound that important, but what he's saying is, hey, we are going to get through this, okay? As bad as things are, this is not something that's going to last forever. It's not something that you need to be in fear of. We are going to get through this. Now, the American people are going to ask, how are we going to do that? Well, Roosevelt and his advisors have a bunch of programs up their sleeve to help end the Depression. And together, all these different programs are called the New Deal. Okay? And the New Deal is comprised of a bunch of different parts. The first part, okay, is relief. The second part is recovery. And the third part is reform. And we're going to talk about each one of those in a little bit of detail as we move through this presentation. Now, before we get into the relief, recovery, and reform, the first thing that Roosevelt does is to declare a bank holiday. We talked about banks closing. So he wants to stop these bank closures because people are panicking. All right. They're rushing on banks to get their money out. What money is left? A bunch of banks have already closed. There's a lot of fear around these bank closings. All right. So, first thing Roosevelt does is says, we're going to have a bank holiday. All the banks are going to shut down. Okay. And then we're going to look at each one individually. All right. We're going to investigate the banks individually. And the ones that are economically sound, those are the ones that are going to reopen. Only the healthy ones are going to reopen. And if your money is in one of the unhealthy banks, we can get it transferred to one of the healthy ones. Okay, so it's not like people are going to be left out in the cold here. And that's what that telegram is down there to the Central National Bank in Junction City, Kansas. The Secretary of Treasury has approved your application for reopening. Okay, and it can reopen on Wednesday, March the 15th. All right, so that's what that telegram is at the bottom. So the first thing, we're going to stop bank closures. We're going to close all the banks for a little holiday, and then only the healthy ones will reopen. Now, let's get into the relief, the recovery, and the reform. The relief programs are direct payments to people for immediate help. They're going to happen instantaneously. And it's not just about giving people money. Oftentimes, these programs, it's kind of like alphabet soup, all right? They're known by their initials. For example, one of them is the WPA. The WPA is the Workers' Progress Administration, or the Works Progress Administration. And like I said, it's not just simply about giving money. What the Work Progress Administration does, and another organization called the CCC, or the Civilian Conservation Corps, it creates jobs as quickly as possible for things like building roads, building libraries, schools, hospitals. The CCC is going to help build national parks and take care of national parks. Okay, if you've ever been to Yorktown, close to Williamsburg, the Yorktown battlefield is preserved in part because of the CCC. In fact, I believe it was an African American CCC camp. They came and built fences. They came and reconstructed fortifications, repaired cannons. They would pay people with the WPA and with the CCC. They would pay people to interview surviving Civil War vets and surviving slaves to get down their stories before they pass away. They would hire people to paint murals in public buildings like bank buildings or governmental buildings and stuff like that. So the idea here is we create jobs, we pay people for those jobs, and not only are they feeling a sense of worth, but we're giving them money, and hopefully that money will get back into the economy and we can start the economy rolling again. Okay. And with the CCC, I know with the CCC, not only did you make money, but you were required to send some money home to your family as well. All right. And some of it was also put in savings to help down the road. So the relief programs are all about direct payment for immediate help instantaneously. Recovery programs are going to help bring the nation out of the depression over time. Okay, so these are longer. This is going to take a little bit longer. One of those recovery programs is the AAA. Okay, now it's not AAA, which is associated with cars. It's the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and the Agricultural Adjustment Act is used to help farmers. Okay, what it would do is it would tell farmers specifically what to plant and when to plant it, in the hopes that it could raise crop prices by lowering production. Okay, we don't want a situation where we have these surpluses of food that nobody can buy. Okay, so we're going to tell people what to plant, when to plant it, in hopes of decreasing turnout and increasing prices. All right, that's the plan. And again, because we're dealing with farming and farming takes time, that's a good example of a recovery program, because a recovery program is going to occur over time. Okay, it's going to get us out of the depression over time. And then finally, reform. We've talked about reform. Reform means change. We are going to correct unsound practices, okay, especially unsound banking and investment practices. And the best example of a reform organization is the FDIC, or the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. If you have your money in a bank today or a credit union, look for one of these stickers on the door. okay, the FDIC, because what the FDIC does is it protects your savings in banks so that we don't have this situation where the bank has loaned out all this money and now the loans haven't been paid back and you're out of luck because the money they loaned to people was your money and now you can't get it. Okay? What the FDIC says is when you deposit money in banks, you are guaranteed to get a portion of it back. Okay? Up to so many thousands of dollars. All right? And the idea is if we can protect this little portion, that will help people out, and we will avoid the situation we had in the Great Depression where all these banks start closing. Okay, that's a reform program. We want to correct an unsound practice so problems don't happen again. All right. Now there's a bunch of other things tied to this New Deal program. All right. The New Deal totally alters the role of government in the economy, and we can totally debate if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because it changes people's attitudes toward governmental responsibility. There were a lot of people before this that didn't want the government involved. In fact, that was one of Hoover's problems. He's like, I'm not sure I have the power to do anything with this depression. Plus, I believe in laissez-faire economics. Business will take care of business. All right. But now with the New Deal, people begin to expect the government to get involved and the government to fix things. And like I said, that's a debate for another day on whether that's a positive or a negative. The New Deal makes the government a more active participant in solving problems. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but now maybe people depend on the government a little too much to solve problems. Okay? And there's other organizations that need to help out as well. All right? Again, that's a topic up for debate. Okay? Now, like I was saying, there's a bunch of other parts to this New Deal program, okay? Totally changes the way people see the government, totally makes the government more involved in solving problems. One of those examples, and this is the far reaching effect of the New Deal program, in fact, it's still around today, the New Deal creates the Social Security Act. And the Social Security Act was a safeguard for workers, and it is still around today. Because it is still around today, it is the most important achievement of the New Deal. WPA has disappeared, the AAA has disappeared, the FDIC is still around. That's an important thing. But a lot of those other recovery programs have gone away too. So the relief and the recovery and the reform programs have all kind of disappeared over time. All right. Social Security is still there. Now, Social Security is going to do a couple of different things. Number one, it provides old age insurance. All right. This was a supplemental retirement plan. That is a key word. It is a supplemental retirement plan. When you start working, part of your paycheck is taken and put in a Social Security account. Okay. With the idea that when you retire, you can start drawing from Social Security. Now, there is a problem with Social Security today in that people are living longer, people are retiring sooner. So the Social Security system is under a lot of strain. And there are some people that think that it will not survive very much longer. Okay. But the idea is that it's a supplemental retirement plan. And again, like I said, the key word is it's supplemental. You need to have some other form of retirement. But when you retire, you would have funds there to help you in your old age. Okay. So workers and employers and employees could draw from that system once they retire. But again, it's supplemental, and there's a lot of concern about it today. Other parts of the New Deal, other parts of the Social Security Act, all right, we get unemployment compensation. If you are injured at work as a direct result of your job, you will get payments. Okay. Actually, sorry. All right. Unemployment compensation. If you lose your job, you will get payment. Okay. If you lose your job, you will get payment. All right. What I was talking about, what I was thinking about, all right, is aid to disabled workers and families with children. if you are injured on the job, okay, it's compensation. If you are injured on the job and it's a direct result of your work and you have to take time off to heal from your injury, you can draw this compensation, okay, until you get better, and then you can return to work. All right. Um, Families with children, okay. Again, if you're at home taking care of the kids, all right, and you can't go to work, you can draw a little of this compensation out. All right. The point of this part of the Social Security Act is to help people who cannot be expected to work for one reason or another. All right. And you don't want to fire them and you want to keep giving them some support. That is an important part of the Social Security Act. Okay. So we got unemployment compensation. That's if you lose your job, you can get some money that way. If you're injured on the job, if you have to take leave because you have a child, you can get compensation that way. And of course, the big thing is Social Security, where people take a part of their paycheck and put it in as a supplemental retirement program. Okay. Now, that's going to wrap it up for the New Deal. All right. And one of the things is, as great as this plan is, and the reform programs are good and Social Security is good and things like that, this is going to help a little bit. But the big thing that's going to bring us out of the Great Depression is World War II and our involvement in World War II. And that's where we're headed a little bit later this week and more in detail next week.